Well, when I was a graduate student, I went to North Texas State. It was a APA approved program, top notch. We had to do, as part of our practicums and all, we had to do groups for the state and the county. And I had to do a group, a domestic violence group with husbands that had been violent with their wives.
Hmm.
It was court ordered. And so one night a week, I had to meet with this group of like 12. And I remember I was like a second year graduate student, and I had to go meet with them, and I thought, oh man, this is going to be tough because these guys are going to be shamed and they're going to be, hanging their heads. Most belligerent, arrogant.
Huh.
Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. You couldn't have filled a thimble with remorse in this group.
Wow.
I mean, seriously. I was stunned at how arrogant and belligerent and resentful they were at having to be there, blaming their wives for having to be there and
Wow.
all this. And I thought, man, I am not cut out for this. I thought, I did it. I had to do it. It was assigned. And I thought, if there are people that do support groups for these people, I don't know how. I thought, not me. If this is my job as a professional, I need to get me I need to become a welder's helper or something because I'm not cut out for this. So you're right. I hadn't thought about that till you said it. I've been to the prison in California where they had sex offenders, pedophiles.
Right.
And some of them had been chemically castrated. And I walked out of there feeling like, this is not for me. This is not for me. Somebody's got to do it. I get it, but.
Well, and it's, psychopaths are, I think, I don't know how they do it. There are these experts in it, but I have no idea how they do it.
But to me, that is completely different than somebody that is aligned differently politically. I mean, like,
right.
I don't get that. I'm talking about pathology that hurts other people versus somebody that just believes differently about a policy or believes differently about something. Even if I think I've got 140 years of science here that contradicts what you're believing, they just don't see it clearly. But that's not somebody that has victimized a child in the last 24 hours. That's a completely different situation.
I 100% agree. I think what activists do is they conflate the two. They say, well, anybody who supports Donald Trump is the same as the KKK. And they lump them in together. And so they say, that's why I'm not going to treat any of them. But obviously, they're totally different from a violent terrorist organization versus voting for a political candidate.
When you have people in your workshops and in the training that you do with them, you have to set objectives for them. You have to set guidelines and boundaries. What are some of the core beliefs that you try to get therapists that you're working with to embrace?
I think it's all about being patient-centered, being client-centered in their work, and thinking about skill with diverse viewpoints. It's not just, I'm not going to attack them for their views, but it's actually understanding, being curious, being engaged, being able to connect to their worldview. And I think therapists often need help with that. They don't understand. One group that we have a workshop coming up on is gun owners. What's gun culture like? A lot of the mental health field pathologizes it. They say, well, you're compensating for something, you're aggressive, or it's some kind of negative pathologized thing. That's going to set you up to clash if a gun owner wants mental health care. And there is distrust between a lot of gun owners and a lot of the mental health field. So it's not just about not attacking them, but it's like being comfortable and being curious and asking and having empathy for people who have different values and different worldviews.
Yeah. See, that's a perfect example to me. And you said the key word. I'm so glad you said it because I think that unlocks so much that I think we've lost. And that is being curious. Like, I'm a gun owner. I have been all my life. I'm from Texas. I mean, down here, particularly if you're out on ranch land or something like that, you better have a gun.
Right.
There are snakes and coyotes and critters. I mean, you better have a gun just for safety purposes. I do have guns, and most of the guns I have, I'm kind of ashamed to say I haven't fired in a long, long time. But that doesn't define me. Probably on the short list of things I would hate to do more than anything in the world is to shoot somebody.
Right.
Oh my God. Can you imagine shooting someone? That would just be, it'd ruin your life. I mean, how do you live with shooting someone? That'd be terrible. So it certainly doesn't define me. But I would really be curious about somebody that would just discard a human being because they owned a gun. I'd be really curious about why they would approach that.
Well, they could discard them, or they might just have a negative stereotype. You're a gun owner, so you're this type of person. And I think it can run the spectrum. I think there are therapists that would have a lot of tension and maybe even conflict with a patient over that issue. And there's others who would try not to politicize it, but they have these negative ideas about what it means to be a gun owner. And that can even be communicated through body language. You just pull back a little bit, or you avoid that topic. You don't ask about it, and you communicate judgment.
You know, I have two sons. One is Jay. He's the older. He's 7 years old, and his brother. He's the ultimate kind of preppy corporate type. When you see him, he's buttoned up and all. And his little brother is a musician. He is so tatted up, you wouldn't believe it. I have seen people that see him walking down the street that would actually cross the street if they saw him coming. I mean, because he's so tatted up, and they think, oh, you know, this is a thug. I mean, these are the two. This is the one that's all corporate, and this is the other one, and they both look the same until you get a closer look. It's so funny how people judge. This is the one that's all tatted up. He looks like James Bond, right?
Right.
And people could see him that way and say, oh, wow, I would have no problem with that. But then somebody could see him in a different environment, and I have, no kidding, actually seen people that cross the street when they see the sleeves of tattoos,
Right.
And stuff like that. And he is absolutely the sweetest kid in the world. He has a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and a cat and a dog.
That should be what you learn as a therapist, because you actually talk to people and you realize, oh, this person who doesn't look like it has an issue you wouldn't expect, or they have a worldview or experiences you wouldn't expect. Therapists should be the best at getting that point. So it's sad when they fall into those stereotypes.
Yeah, and that's what you worry about. They would see him and cross the street because of judgment, but if they saw him here,
right,
with his wife and little baby, they'd come up and say, oh, how cute. Let me introduce myself.
Right.
But you said the key word, curious.
Right.
If you're not curious about somebody, if you don't ask questions, if you don't explore, you never expand yourself. You never get there. And I worry that these therapists that are being trained to prejudge and get into identity politics and decide that anybody that says there are just two genders, anybody that says they don't support equality of outcome or whatever, are missing such an opportunity to learn and help, which is why what you're doing is so powerful and so important.